Good evening. It's time to begin. My name is Shelley Woodruff, and I get the privilege whenever we have these conversations event to come here and welcome you all to this space on behalf of the church. I am one of the pastors here at First Baptist, and I want to just say welcome. Welcome to this space. It's not quite frigid in here as it is out there. Hopefully it's a place of warmth, both literally and figuratively. Welcome to this space, and I want to say thank you for choosing to spend 45 minutes or an hour here with us this evening for this. Now, we host a good bit of these conversations events with Georgia Center for the Book. They're always a gift, but they're almost always books that are written for grown-ups. And it's a joy to get to be part of an author coming who writes books for children. Because here's why I love children's books. Children's books, if they are well written, and especially if they are well illustrated like these are, teach children from their earliest ages how to imagine different possibilities than what their physical eyes see. And when children learn how to do that from an early age, they become adults who still remember how to imagine different possibilities than what their physical eyes can see. So not only do I enjoy books by Jan Brett, but I am just grateful that they exist, because not only do they entertain, but they teach us a fundamental truth from such a fundamental age of what we are capable of imagining and creating together. So I want to introduce to you Joe Davidge, who is the head of Georgia Center for the Book, who brings us these events to host, and then we will move on with the fantastic program. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. It's always so fun to be over here at First Baptist for our events. This is actually the Center for the Book's last event for 2024. So thank you all for coming out on this blustery evening in Decatur. And, after we're all done here, I hope you will all go over to the square and see the tree magically turned on somewhere around 7 o'clock. So just a couple of things. I know some of you asked about the posters. I will be giving out the posters during the signing, so do hang out. We'll give one for family. We do have a few extras, but we'll give the posters out over there. We will also, if you guys missed Hedgie will be coming back. So if you didn't visit and take a picture with Hedgie earlier, you can do that. But we are so very pleased to have Jan Brett here this evening. I remember when I was a bookseller and the Mitten and the Hat and the Gingerbread Baby book came out. They were just such wonderful things to see, and it's still selling and still being read years later. And if you go to the Decatur Library, we have a very special seasonal scavenger hunt in the children's department. If you can find all of the mittens that have been hidden around the children's department, you will win a prize. So if you're over at the Decatur Library, see Miss Mia or Miss Lauren at the children's desk and do the little mitten hunt, okay? So right now, why don't we all put our hands together and give a big round of applause for Jan Brett.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, and thank you for all being here. It's great to be around people that love books and children's books, and I have a feeling that many of you are already artists and may have started your own book yourselves. So today I will tell you about how I got the idea for Alice in a Winter Wonderland, and then I'm going to draw you a picture, and then it'll be time for me to sign your book if you would like. So welcome, and I have to start by saying I want to introduce my husband, Joe. I don't know how many of you here are musicians. I know one trumpeter right there. But he is a musician. And if you know about the symphony orchestra, there's different groups of instruments. There's percussion, woodwinds, brass, and the string section. So the smallest of the strings is the violin. If you listen to a symphony, it's like the one that has the melodic voice, and it has often the theme of the music. And then viola is a little bit larger, also played under the chin like this. It's a larger, deeper voice, and that often joins the violin with the melody. Next comes cello. I don't know, maybe some of you play cello. It's about this high, and they say that it's closest to the human voice in its range. That's the lowest notes to the highest notes. And that sometimes the composer will pick the cello to kind of tell a story in musical notes rather than words. But if the composer wants a majestic sound, a grand sound, they will choose the double bass. It's a stringed instrument over 6 feet tall. Its shoulders come up to here. That's what they call them, the shoulders. And that's what my husband, Joe, that I'm going to introduce, has played for 63 years in the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Pops. So this is Joe right here, and I go on his tours and listen to him play all over the world, like in Japan and South America and Europe, but I don't have to carry his double bass. And when he comes with me on the book tours, we have a great time in that bus that you might have seen outside. We started in Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going all around the country, and then we're gonna fly home. Now, the flying home got to be a little bit of a problem because usually we bring our bunny, Little Snow, when he's in a book. He's been in a lot of my books. And the airline said that rabbits are on a no-fly list. So I don't know. Dogs and cats are okay, but rabbits have been banned. And we're worried that maybe a rabbit went on the rampage in first class. That's just a joke. We can't understand why rabbits won't come. But he didn't really mind the flying back, but we really enjoyed having him on our bus with us. So when I get to talk to you, I'll probably ask you what kind of pets you have, because we really enjoy our rabbit, and he also serves as a model for the books. And that's what I'm going to draw for you today, the white rabbit. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, that is the true title, by Lewis Carroll, was written in 1865. That's a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago. And that was one of my favorite books when I was little. And other people thought so too, because every year people get out their old copy or somebody retells it because they love the story so much. It tells about a little girl. In the original, she's sitting on a riverbank with her sister, and she gets drowsy and falls asleep playing cards. And then she awakens to hear, I'm late, I'm late. And she looks up to see a white rabbit dressed all in clothes. I put him in the back cover. And he pops down a rabbit hole. And she is so curious, she just has to follow. So she goes down the rabbit hole and finds another world underground where everything is topsy-turvy and unusual. There's lots of characters there that everybody keeps remembering from the very first time they read the story. The Cheshire Cat, the Mad Hatter, the Caterpillar. And that's what I did in my book, was I took that story, and it's okay to do to copy because it's in public domain, which means it was written so long ago that you can tell it again and nobody cares. They think it's a good idea. The Disney studio did a great job of doing that with the movie about Alice in Wonderland. But so I decided I would set my book in a different place. Where would that be? Well, I was out in Alaska on an adventure, and I was a tourist in Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska. So this was in June, so there wasn't any snow in the town. But there was, this is a small city, and it's right near the ocean. It's very beautiful. But if you were like playing football at their high school or outside on the sidewalks walking along with your dog, if you looked up towards the mountains, you would see a huge, giant glacier coming down from the mountains. So if you know what a glacier is, it's like a frozen river. And that ice fell as snow sometimes thousands of years ago, and it piled up, it never thawed out, and it slowly moves down towards the sea like a giant river. And you know, most of North America had glaciers covering it during the 4 ice ages. So gave me a hint about what's next to come. So we were on the glacier. We took a helicopter ride up there, and the pilot showed us around, and she showed us not to step on dangerous crevasses, which are giant cracks in the glacier. So she was very sure about where we could walk and where we couldn't walk. But then as I was going along the route she said was okay, I noticed a blue-green hole in the glacier that was different than a crevasse. It almost looked like a drain hole. In fact, people that know about glaciers, professors and experts and PhDs, they call it a moulin, M-O-U-L-I-N. It means drain hole in French. So what happens is the top of the glacier gets heated up by the sun in the summer, and it starts melting, and that water has to go someplace, and it finds like a little place that it can settle, and then it melts more and more and more until you get this hole. And when we looked down the hole, you could not see the bottom of it. And right then I thought, it looks like an icy rabbit hole. And maybe that's where I would set my story. So I set it in Alaska, and all the animals and creatures that appear in Lewis Carroll's story are now replaced by ones that are similar but live in Alaska. And when she goes down the rabbit hole and she finds another underground world, it's under the glacier, and it's like she has gone back to the Pleistocene. So that Pleistocene is just a word meaning the Ice Age. And that is, like, let's say 12,000 years ago. If you could be transported back in time, far above the Arctic Circle, you would see megafauna. So you would see woolly mammoths. You know what those are, right? They're elephants covered with fur that have giant tusks. Both the girls and the boys have giant tusks. And to this day, they sometimes find a woolly mammoth trapped in the ice. It was frozen there thousands of years ago. So I think that the latest news is that the last woolly mammoths went extinct 4,000 years ago, which is really not that long ago in the march of time. Also was up there was saber-toothed cats. So I don't know if you're intrigued by saber-toothed cats, but it's like a lion-like animal that lived in North America the same time as humans, and it has giant teeth that come down on either side. And scientists call it a smilodon. So Lewis Carroll had the Cheshire Cat because near where he lived in England, that's where his story was set, there was a town called Cheshire that had a kind of cheese that they made, and on the cheese was a picture of a cat with a great big grin. And so he decided to make his little friends laugh by putting the Cheshire Cat from the cheese package into his book. So I did the same thing, only mine is a smilodon. So I'm going to show you how I start the story out. It is set originally in the gold rush. So that would have been in the late 1800s. They discovered gold in Alaska, and lots of people went up there and sometimes brought their families later on to pan for gold and stake their claims and find gold coming down in the rivers and in the earth. So here she is she's got a team of huskies, which is a great way to get around in that Arctic place because a car could never drive up those mountains, and it was before snow machines or snowmobiles were around. So a husky dog team would be a great way to get around. So she's looking over and she hears the same thing. I'm late. And there goes the rabbit down the rabbit hole, which is a moulin in the glacier. The next page, I turn the book upside down because it shows her floating down the rabbit hole, just like in Lewis Carroll's story. And I loved being able to turn the book sideways because Lewis Carroll, the original author, he loved puzzles and tricks and games. And that's why on the side you can see there's playing cards. That's how his story starts, and that's how my story starts. And some of the characters are playing cards. And he was a math professor. And if you start at the beginning, I should start out by saying that I have an art director and an editor that help me with my books. So all of you that are writing your own stories, you might have a teacher that helps you out explaining how you can make your story better, perhaps, or they might compliment you on your big imagination. And my editor and art director, they do the same thing. Like my art director might say, well, you've got somebody too close to the fold in the page and you can't really see it as well. She might say that. But they both ganged up on me one day and they said, Jan, your books are always in the Arctic and there's not enough bright colors there. And everybody all the animals are either gray or beige or brown and not very interesting. And I said, well, I can't do anything about what they look like because they're in the Arctic and that's why I wanted to be authentic. So I put playing cards in the border, and they spell pie. So if any of you like math, I bet you all love math, right? Well, pi is a figure of mathematics where you take a circle, and if you measure that circle and then measure that goes around the circle, and then you measure the diameter of the circle, that ratio stays the same no matter what the size. And that is called pi, and it's infinite, so it can't be divided. It just goes, the number goes after the decimal point, it goes on and on and on for infinity. So a lot of kids like to memorize how far they can go with pi in the numbers. So I start out with 3.1415, and then all the way through the book is pi. And I didn't tell anybody about it because I want kids to look and say, those numbers sound kind of familiar. And then someone will say, oh, I bet that's pi. And it is. And I didn't know that myself. I had to ask my stepson, who is a physicist, and he gave me all the numbers, or I could have gotten it from the internet. So I'm going to tell you about a few of the characters that I had a lot of fun with drawing. So as she falls down the rabbit hole, she kind of floats. She doesn't hit hard, and she hits on some nice moss. But when she lands in this little icy chamber, she notices there's a teeny tiny door there, and she's looking around for the white rabbit who has just scurried off in the distance, and she doesn't know how she's going to get through that door. So she looks and starts to cry because she's afraid she's going to be stuck there, and she cries and cries and cries until there's a big puddle of tears. Then she spots a little bottle that says, "Drink me." So she takes the cork off, and smells it. It smells just like bumblebee honey. It's a good smell. And so she takes a little sip, and immediately she starts to shrink, 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 until she's teeny tiny, and she can go through the door. And when she gets through the door, she realizes there's a pond there, and it's a pond made from all the tears she cried when she was much, much larger. So we have to use our imaginations to think that could really happen. But that's the fun of the story, is that everything becomes curiouser and curiouser. And I just wanted to tell you about this one creature these are all Alaskan birds. There's an eaglet, there's a crested puffin, there's a murre, and then there's horned puffins. But then also, this is a great auk. Lewis Carroll had a dodo in his book, and dodos lived in Mauritius. That was an island off the coast of Africa. They are about 3 feet tall. They were, I should say, 3 feet tall. They're flightless. They have teeny tiny wings, and they have great giant bills. They're in the pigeon family, believe it or not. And they went extinct in the 1800s because they weren't afraid of people, and the people were hungry, and so the people ate them. And there is another bird called the great auk. The same exact thing happened to them. They lived in the North Atlantic, and they lived on little rocky islands in the ocean. And they also were 3 feet tall, had little short wings, and were flightless, but great swimmers, and then they had a great big bill. So I thought, I'll put a great auk in my book, because it went extinct just like the dodo. So almost all of the characters have a story. Here they're having a race, And when they finish the race, they go through a tunnel in the ice, and Alice, the first thing she sees is a mushroom with a caterpillar on top. Now, in Lewis Carroll's story, the caterpillar was smoking a hookah, and it's not very healthy to be smoking, so I had to change it and make him playing the double bass, which is what Joe plays. Much more, he's not going to get any kind of bad breathing problems from the double bass. So that was a nice change, I thought. And on she goes into a little house, sees the Cheshire Cat for the first time, which in my book is the Smilodon. And on she has adventure after adventure. And every adventure she has, she gets a little bit bolder and more sure of herself in this topsy-turvy world until she meets the Queen of Hearts. And she, in the book, is kind of scary looking. She's not very pretty, and she's always saying, "Off with your head, off with your head." And then in my book, they're snowy owls. So instead of being in kind of an unattractive queen, she is a snowy owl with a crown. And you know, snowy owls are a very beautiful, majestic bird. They're probably the apex avian in the Arctic. So they are that, which means apex means the top bird, and avian means bird, and so they would be the big predator up there. So they would rule the tundra. So I had fun drawing them, and then they have little crowns on their heads and cards on the front, because she's invited to play croquet with the king and queen. The Cheshire Cat appears, and on they go to more and more adventures and all this time, Alice is looking at the world around her, and things are a little bit right and a little bit wrong, which I must say I felt a lot like that when I was 7 years old, the same age as Alice. And here she comes upon a griffin. So I bet a lot of you like mythological beasts. And so this mythical beast appeared in the original story, and it's got the head of an eagle, and then its chest is made of feathers, it's got wings, and its front claws are like an eagle's. But then it turns into a lion and has a lion's tail. So it's called a griffin. And on she goes until they do a dance with, in Lewis Carroll had lobsters, but lobsters don't live in Alaska, they have king crabs. And then they go to the courthouse where Alice is in a trial where everyone is trying to find out who stole the tarts. And tarts are like little tiny pies that they have in England. And during that time, she starts to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, the king and queen get a little bit bossy with her, and she stands up to them and says, "You are nothing but a pack of cards." And as she gets bigger and bigger, and so the last page is one of those turn the book sideways pages, and you can see all the cards are disappearing, and she wakes up with her sister having had a most extraordinary dream. And off they go back to their log cabin over the glacier. So that was my take on it. And I think I'd like to draw you the white rabbit and make it like a little drawing lesson, because Little Bird told me that a lot of you not only like to write stories, but you also like to draw. And that's what I like to do. Because ever since I was, I'd say first grade, I wanted to be a children's book illustrator. And if you went into my class with Mrs. Lofgren and all the kids and said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I remember this well. I said, "Children's book illustrator." And now that it's my job, it's like living in a fairy tale world, because I get to color all day long. That's my job, coloring. So that's pretty fun. And read books. That's the other thing that's very fun. And these are my markers. They're called Prismacolor. And I chose them because they're kind of high quality. They've got a thick end and a thin end. Normally, I would use my watercolors, and it takes me an hour to do an inch. But I don't have a cookie timer that says, okay, the hour is up. It just does take a long time. And I'm mentioning it because one time, it was a little boy said, I love to draw, but I'll never be an artist as good as you. And he said it in a really sad, plaintive way. And I said, yes, you can. You know, I've been practicing, well, I'm going to use my age now. For 70 years, I've been practicing. It takes me an hour to do an inch. And I said, it just takes a long time to get to be a good artist and to make a picture that you're going to be really happy with. So I'm hoping that he now is spending a little bit more time with his drawings and is very happy with the results. Whoop. There goes the pink. So I'm going to start out with, I'll move this a little bit away from that table. And I'm going to start with the rabbit's ears, the white rabbit. And he kind of starts the story. So sometime when you're writing your story, you might have a little sidekick or a smaller character that kind of leads the way, and that's what the rabbit does in this story. That is his role. He goes down the rabbit hole, and Alice follows him. So he's got kind of a little fluffy forelock, because I want to make him appealing, and that's where his nose is. And then the back of a rabbit's head is kind of straight. If you ever have a rabbit, they're not the easiest character to draw, because it's hard to make have expressions because their mouth is like under their chin because the nose is coming out like here. Here's a profile, nose, 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 mouth. So it's a little bit harder. So I pretend that there's like half a grapefruit, cut in half and then put down on a plate so that you just see that dome-like shape that makes his head, and then I'll put underneath his bow tie, because he wears clothes. And then I'm going to make a little dot right here. That's where his eye's going to be, because I have a funny little demonstration to do where I lose all my dignity. I'm going to, when you're drawing, and this is like I'm going to give you helpful hints about your drawing that help me. When you're drawing a character, it could be an animal, a person, a robot, anything. Pay the most attention when you're drawing the character's eyes, because as human beings, that's where we look if we want to know what that person is thinking. For example, let's see your best friend, and their eyes are all like wide open and kind of happy looking, and you're saying, oh, they have something to tell me that's interesting and exciting. Or you could say, oh, let's say you're playing soccer and somebody's face is all scrunched up. Maybe they hurt their toe a little bit when they were giving the ball a big kick, or could be anything. Maybe they're looking maybe it's your little brother or sister, they're just not ready to get up yet, and their head is tilted to the side and their eyelids are half closed because they're not quite awake yet. So those are all clues that you can get from somebody's eyes. And this is the silly demonstration that I do. I'm going to cover my face, everything but my eyes. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to have a feeling or make an expression. It could be happy, sad, scared, surprised, adventuresome, anything I want, but I want you to guess it, okay? And you have to say out loud when I turn around. Okay, there's going to be 3 different faces. And this is to show you how important the eyes are and how you can use that in your drawings. Okay, so first comes no expression at all. Then I'm going to cover up my lower face, turn around, and guess what I'm thinking. Everybody got it. Happy. I didn't hear one other answer. It was all happy. So I think what happened beneath my hands is my cheeks kind of went up and made my eyes more crescent shaped. You know what a crescent is? Like a little moon shaped. And then my eyebrows went up probably an inch because I was excited and happy. So that was probably a combo, happy and excited. So those were the 2 things that were clues for you that you knew I was happy. Okay, so here comes number 2. See if you can guess this one. Okay, straight face. Sad. This time the corners of my mouth went down and kind of stretched the whole bottom of my face, made my eyes a little bit like pulled down too, and you noticed that when you saw this part of my face. Then my eyebrows helped out a lot because they look like this. You can see this in cartoons. That's a good way to get ideas as to look at cartoons, because our cartoonist uses very simple lines, just a few of them, to to make the face of the character. So the eyebrows that go like this, and then probably there's some like little wrinkles here where I'm making a little squinchy face. And now for the third one. So you've gotten 2 right. This one is a little harder. It's kind of a combination of things, okay? So we'll go number 3. Okay, straight face. Surprise! So I added a few things. I did the blinks, the eye blinks, and then I did what else? Well, first of all, my mouth was in a big O, so then that made my eyes get wider. And I was pretending that on this side was one of those spaceships that had the legs and a ladder coming down, a little green alien coming down the stairs. And on this side, I was pretending there was like a little baby dino, a little cute one, not a threatening one. And I was like, ooh, what is that? So I was doing the blinks, and I was opening my eyes wide. Because like if you see something you've never seen before, or you want to think about a little bit, your eyes get very wide because it makes your field of vision, all the things that you can see, with your wide eyes, you can notice things a lot better. So that's one thing that I would do. And my eyebrows were up in a curious manner, like, what is that? I'm thinking to myself. And also, I used a little body language. So when you draw your character that you're drawing in your picture, and remember I said it could even be a dog that you're drawing, you can use body language. So body language just means, like, I'll just do a couple, sleepy, mad. And with this one, I was looking like I wanted to investigate, or I want to be ready. So I've got 1 foot forward. I'm kind of going towards that spaceship and maybe getting ready to either go forward and investigate the situation, or I could turn on my heels and run away if it looked like it was something I wanted to leave the scene. And same with a baby diner. I might want to go and see, is it okay? Or is this mother around? I think I'll go the other way. And that would be the body language. So I was ready for action, and I was, ready for my next move, let's say. So when you're doing your character, you could envision the situation the character is in, and that character will help you tell your story. And even if you don't have page after page after page, you can just look at one picture and it will still tell a story. And that's when you're doing the eyes will help you out, transmit that. So I'm going to make him look winsome. Now that is a word that I really like. It means kind of, what does winsome mean? It means like appealing, and you kind of enjoy looking at that character. And I'm making his pupil of his eye looking up towards the sky. So we all have, if you know about the parts of the eye, the black part is the pupil, and your eyes are very shiny, so if you want to make it look realistic, you can put a little white dot, which is a sparkle in someone's eye. You can even see it on an animal, anybody that has shiny eyes. And then the iris, well, I think I'm going to make this rabbit's eyes kind of a purpley, because he's a little bit magical, so I want to use a color that normally wouldn't exist in nature, even though he looks pretty realistic. And then I put a little thin line around the eye, because rabbits would have like skin between their eye and the fur. So I'm going to make a line right here that's going to make him look kind of a little bit worried. I want him to be appealing, which means I want people to like him. And then animals don't have eyebrows, but I have an artistic license, and you do too. That means if we feel like adding something, we can. It's our own picture. We can do whatever we want. So I'm going to take a little tuft of fur above his eyebrow and make him look like he's thoughtful. That's going to help make him look thoughtful. So there's that. And then let's see what else could I do to add to his expression. Well, I think it's about done. So I'm using some little scritchy, scratchy strokes with my marker. I'm going to color him in and write his ears, and then I'm going to draw his outfit. So when I read the first my first version of Alice in Wonderland, the White Rabbit had quite a fancy little jacket. And in the olden days, a young man that liked his clothes very attractive and fashionable would be called a dandy. And I think this rabbit was quite the dandy because he had pretty fun clothes to wear. He's got a little plaid jacket with gold buttons, and he's got a little pocket. So when you dress your animal in clothes, you have that option of having fun with their clothes. And I'll have him, like, maybe he's pointing out to Alice about where to go next. Because he's kind of as I said before, he kind of leads her through Wonderland. Now he's got a little vest underneath there. And then I can decide now, do I want to make a portrait of him? Or do I want him having a little bit of an action pose? I think I will make him having a little bit of an action pose. So I'll take this hind leg and make it moving as if he's scampering and running. And I got to use my bunny, Little Snow, as a good model for my rabbit. He also was in the Animal Santa. He was in the Easter Rabbit. No, Easter Egg was the name of that one. And he's patterned after a kind of rabbit that lives in the Arctic regions. It's a snowshoe rabbit, but in the winter he's white because he blends in with the snow and no animal can really see him because he'll stand right still. And then in the spring he starts getting brown spots. And then in the summer he's completely brown, the same rabbit, white to brown, and then back to white again in the wintertime. So you can picture how if you have a bunny, you know if they sense danger, they'll stand very still. And if they're brown, they will be against the brown grasses, and no one will see them except for maybe other rabbits. So we've got to put his whiskers on. And when I put these squishy, scratchy strokes, I try to show how soft he is. So that would be something I take a lot of time with in my drawing. Okay, so I don't know how many of you want to be biologists someday, but here's a really great word for you. You know how a bird has feathers, and it's called their plumage. So you could say, oh, that robin has such beautiful plumage. That's how you'd use it in a sentence, meaning not just one feather, but the whole different red breast, gray back, black head. Well, if it's an animal, you can say it's pelage. So if you remember that and you say, for example, now that squirrel has beautiful pelage, and everybody will look at you and think, oh, I bet that person's going to be a biologist someday. So he's got pelage because he's a mammal. And now I'm going to color him in, which is the most fun part. Because I kind of agree with my editor and art director who says, oh, we love to have color in your books, Jan. It makes the characters look so entertaining. So I'm going to use my marker, my Prismacolor marker. I just say the brand name because this is probably they last the longest. The only thing is you have to remember to put the caps on or else they dry up. But they come in packages of like 8, or you can get the whole box of them that has 144 colors. There's colors like chartreuse, magenta, melon, ginger, smoke gray, all these gorgeous colors. And if you got excited about hearing about those color names, you're probably going to be an artist. Just like you might get excited about interesting words, you might be a writer. Like an interesting word would be like pelage and winsome. So there's his yellow jacket. And then I told you about him being a dandy because he loves his fashion. So he's got a plaid jacket. So that's easy to do with the red stripes. And then, so now if you pictured me at my art table, this would take up quite a long time. And then adding a little bit of color, I'm going to give him blue velvet cuffs. So velvet's a kind of very soft fabric that I'm sure would be a good one for a white rabbit to choose. And Did I tell you that these markers have a pointy end too if I want to do little details? If I was doing a smaller picture, I could use that pointy end. Oh, and the best part is that they're see-through, they're translucent. So translucent is a word that means you can see through. So one of my techniques that I like to use, whoops, forgot his pocket. He's got 2 pockets there in the blue. See how that makes that jacket look interesting? So I've got pink, here's the pink, and I'm just gonna, it's yellow, but then I'm just gonna go over it with the pink, and it's gonna just make it look a little bit more spiffy. So, or spiffy or kind of, you know, a little sparkle to it and interest, because usually when you look at something, there's some source of light that could be changing. And so when I do my artwork, I often will layer colors. You can do that with watercolors, or you can do it with markers, or you can do it with crayons. So this is like layering the colors. That's one of my helpful hints. And if you're doing your drawing and it's not looking quite right to you, like this seems like something's not exactly the way I want it, you can take the whole picture and bring it into the bathroom and put it in the mirror, because everything comes backwards, and it's like looking at it for the first time. And you can troubleshoot, which means you can find your mistake. So I do that still as a grown lady that has done a lot of books. Sometimes I'll take the picture into a big mirror and make sure that I haven't gotten, sometimes it will be something as simple as one eye will be higher than the other if it's a front view, or it could be maybe the character is tilting a little bit to one way or the other way, or maybe I've just got the proportions wrong. But then it shows up really easily, and then I can fix it. And that's why artists often will do a sketch first with a pencil, and what is on the end of the pencil? An eraser. So that if you make a mistake, you can start and do a certain part over again. So I think that's one of the things that I like best about drawing, is it kind of starts out one way, and then you get another idea, and you can erase a little bit and change it. And so my advice would be not to be too discouraged if your picture doesn't come out perfectly, because sometimes I have to scrap the whole page, which I don't really like to do that, but because then I have to start over again. Here's the gold buttons, but that happens a lot if you're an artist. Something else is gold on this page. What is it? Oh, I forgot his pocket watch. So here's his pocket watch. I'll have to put more black on that later, because now I'm going to do shading. So shading is a fun way to make your picture look more realistic. And it's really easy to do. This is a pretty dark gray, but I'm gonna follow the edge. It's too dark, actually. I'm gonna try another gray. This one looks good. And I'm going to just leave that one there and just go all around the edges of my picture, and you'll see how it makes it look more 3D, more like a, and here's, it's a brownish shade of gray. And I'm gonna go over the eye. Remember how I was saying how important the eye is? So I want him to have a little expression. He does not look happy enough to me. So I'm just gonna work on it, give him a little dimple here. And you can see how just a little bit of shading can change that. And also make his fur look nice and fluffy, his pelage. And he's pointing. So I'm going really quickly so no one gets tired of sitting in their chair looking at my picture. So all around the edges. And now does it look a little bit more like it's 3D? A little bit more lively and like he could talk? And he would be saying, I'm late, I'm late. He's almost done, and then his little white cottontail, and then here's his pocket watch. And I'll put the numbers on next, and then it'll be done. Oh, I have one last thing to do. Put the whiskers, 12, 6, 3, 9, ... And so we'll make it 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. And then an artist should always sign their work. So when you draw a picture and you feel like it's finished, and sometimes that you might have to take a couple of tries. Like a lot of times I'll put my picture aside and work on it later. But then when I feel like I'm finished, then I will always sign my work, Jan Brett, but then I will put the date. So we're in December of 2024. And the reason I'm making a big deal about the date is because I have a challenge for you, which is the next time you say, there's nothing to do, I'm bored, this is when you want to get a big piece of paper and your favorite art materials, could be pencils, crayons, anything you want, and find a quiet place and tell everybody around you, I'd like to have a little quiet time to draw for like about an hour. You could even put the cookie timer on for an hour because sometimes it takes a while for ideas to form. Sometimes you have to get in that relaxing mood when you want to draw. Think about what you want to draw and start like at one, I always started at one corner, or you could start in the middle with your image. And then what happens to me that I love is all the world around me kind of gets not as important. It kind of fades away. And my picture occupies all my thought processes. So I'm thinking about how soft the rabbit's fur is, what kind of weather is there outside, what he might be saying. And I get so interested in the picture that all of a sudden, poof, the hour is over. And I look there and I say, wow, look at that. I drew this picture and it's like come alive. So I hope that that's what makes illustrating children's books really fun for me, is when my pictures all of a sudden take a life of their own. And that's what happens to me, and then I hope it happens to you. Happy reading. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm looking forward to meeting you.